Tenant advocates are shocked to see that landlords are still evicting tenants even after receiving rental assistance payments. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's really a pretty tenant-friendly article coming out of the city of Chicago. And basically what it's covering is the fact that some people are surprised that landlords are still filing for evictions for some of these tenants who didn't pay rent during the pandemic and then received rental assistance. Okay, I guess they thought in their minds that, you know, if the landlord gets paid back the money that they're owed, well, they are going to keep that tenant in their property indefinitely out of just goodwill. Well, that's just not the case. Now, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know if you are surprised that, hey, guess what? We're still going to have to file for evictions for these people, even though the rental assistance checks have come, okay? Now, as I have said many times before, the people who were being protected by the pandemic mostly, they weren't the people who truly were suffering in all of the cases, okay? A lot of these people were the same people who would have had trouble paying rent whether there was no pandemic or whether there was a pandemic. So these people, you know, they got a lucky break. They got a long period of time where they didn't have to pay any rent, and they got the government to pay the rent for them with this rental assistance program. But going into the future, there's not going to be any rental assistance for a lot of them. And guess what? If they weren't capable of paying their rent before, they're not going to be able to pay their rent in the future either. So that's why these landlords just have to get rid of them. So this article is coming from the ChicagoTribune.com, and it says, some people face eviction even after getting COVID-19 rental assistance. Did this do what we thought it would do? I think they're really surprised, but I'm not. Okay, let's get into the article. Tenants can once again apply for COVID-19 rental assistance, but the latest wave of $1 billion program that is sought to financially stabilize Illinois renters and landlords. But although the program has succeeded in protecting some renters, tenant advocates say others are being evicted or threatened with eviction despite receiving thousands of dollars to pay the money they owe. The problem has taken on greater urgency in recent months as the state's moratorium on evictions expired in October. Sarah Heyman, a member of the neighborhood group Unite La Vita, said the group helped about 50 tenants in the little village fill out paperwork for rental assistance through the city of Chicago. But after getting the payments, a lot of landlords still file for evictions or decline to renew leases, she said, making the experience bittersweet. Now, notice that they said there that the landlord either filed for eviction or declined to renew a lease. Now, declining to renew a lease is completely different than filing for eviction, but they threw that in there as though it was the same thing, okay? The landlord might be 100%, in the wrong to file an eviction when the laws and rules that said if you take this rental assistance, then you cannot file eviction within a certain time period, right? But that made no mention whatsoever about not renewing a lease. So if a tenant's 12-month lease has ended, right, and the rental assistance has paid back the money that tenant owed, because, you know, that money, it's not free money for the landlord. That's the money that is owed to the landlord for providing housing for this tenant for however many months they were living there. So, okay, the landlord got all their money back, and then the landlord says, hey, this tenant does not have the money to pay the rent going forward into the future. So guess what? I'm not going to renew the lease now. Okay, that would be completely ridiculous. Here, sign this lease saying that you can pay when I know that you can't. You know, I mean, it would be like me renting an apartment to somebody who's unemployed. I just wouldn't do it. And keeping that in mind, landlords have the right to, you know, just not renew these people's leases, even after accepting rental assistance money. Working so hard to get those tenants rental assistance, and then they weren't completely out of the woods yet, they didn't have a job, and then their landlord follow up by just kicking them out, it sucks, he said, or she said. LaShawn Kelly, Director of Housing for the Garfield Park Community Council, said the program has benefited the community, but her agency also has fielded calls from tenants facing evictions or non-renewals after getting rental assistance. Many tenants still don't have jobs when their rental assistance expires, and some landlords who get many months worth of rental assistance in one single payment lose track of how many months are covered, Kelly noted. And that might be the case in a few cases, right? But I'm pretty sure that most landlords are keeping track of their financials, especially the bigger landlords. They keep track of their financials very good. Even in the case of smaller landlords, most of us, we know where our money is. We know how much we're owed for sure. And we're not making a mistake and, taking a whole bunch of money and, it's covering more months than what is owed, and then we're just kicking them out anyway. No, we have our reasons for what we're doing, and we have to abide by those reasons. Okay, so it seems weird. They're playing it off like landlords are just stupid or something, but no, we're not. One of the issues, advocates said, is the lack of follow-up by government officials to ensure tenants understand their rights or landlords abide by the rules tied to receiving the public money, such as waiving late fees or temporary bans on filing evictions for non-payment of rent. And that might be the case, okay? I'm sure there are so many rules and stipulations on the rental assistance money that there might be a few landlords who don't understand them, then don't understand that, hey, you can't file for eviction, for so long after receiving these rental assistance funds. But, going back, they were talking about non-renewal of leases, and that's a completely separate topic. And that, it just blows my mind that they're just tying these two things together. Non-renewal of lease and an eviction are two different things, okay? In one, the person just said, hey, I don't want you staying here anymore. I'm not going to, you're not going to be able to sign a new lease and you got to go. That's not an eviction. The Garfield Park Community Council has begun following up with tenants on its own, Kelly said. That's a lot of money that went out, she said. Did this do what we thought it would do? The Illinois Housing Development Authority, which administers the bulk of pandemic-related federal aid for rent arrears in the state, said in a statement that it unfortunately is not in a position to take any action that could be immediately helpful to tenants who continue to face eviction after receiving assistance. The agency referred tenants to legal aid groups and other service providers. Yeah, they just told them, hey, we're too busy. We don't have the staff to handle this issue. Okay, so if landlords aren't following the rules, then nothing is going to happen. And that's kind of a bad thing, but at the same time, look at the situation that they put these landlords in, okay? You have to keep a whole bunch of non-paying tenants in your units, and the only thing you want is to be paid back the money that was already owed to you, okay? Now, these tenants are getting this huge handout. Basically, they get to stay for free. Whether the landlord is, paying their rent or the government is paying their rent, they're not paying anything. Okay, it's the taxpayers or it's coming out of the landlord's pocket. So these tenants, they don't want to lose that benefit. That's part of why I don't like this program so much. Okay, when we have programs like Section 8, at least the tenant has to come up with a certain percentage of the monthly rent. So we know that they are putting at least a minimal amount of effort into, living in this place, right? But when it comes to the rental assistance program, this thing it's rife for abuse. I mean, what is the motivation for these tenants to go off and get a job when they can just sit there and they can live in this place for free? Okay, and they can collect other benefits as well, and then use that money on whatever the heck they want. That's what part of my gripe is with this. So we have a situation where tenants are living for free, the government is paying all their bills, and there's no motivation for them to go and actually get a job and then get themselves out of this situation. The Chicago Department of Housing, which also administers rental assistance, said in a statement it has been focused on getting money out quickly due to the emergency nature of the pandemic crisis. The department said it was aware of some cases where evictions are improperly filed and has dealt with them on a case-by-case basis. The department partnered with the University of Chicago Inclusive Economy Lab to follow up with applicants to track their outcomes, but a department spokeswoman did not immediately respond to questions about the partnership. So, let's skip down a little bit in this story because I'm interested to hear what landlords are saying about this type of situation. Okay, why are landlords, now that's the true question, right? If this article is going to cover all this stuff about, from the tenant advocates perspective, from tenant right lawyers perspective, from the tenant themselves perspective, you would think they would go up to the landlords and say, well, why are you not renewing the leases on these people who received rental assistance? And fortunately, this article did answer that question and did talk to somebody. And let me just go straight to it. Reached by phone, Robert Ellis of WPD Management said he thought rental assistance had worked for McAllister as she was not taken to court. He acknowledged problems with the apartment, but said McAllister didn't have sufficient income to live in the building, a problem the temporary rental assistance wouldn't solve. She can't cover the rent moving forward for the unit, he said. We're doing our best to work with her, Ellis said. Ellis suggested that McAllister apply for rental assistance a third time, but McAllister said she just wants to move on. You're not going to get any more money from me, she said. So basically, the landlord, he said a lot right there, okay? Even receiving the rental assistance, this tenant, just like a lot of these tenants, the reason that they go through with the eviction, the reason that they don't renew the lease is because they still won't be able to pay moving forward. Okay? So it doesn't help to keep them in there any longer, and it just creates more issues for them. Then they have a non-paying tenant in there, and they're hoping, because that's all they can do at this point is hoping that maybe this tenant will qualify for more rental assistance. No, it's awful. Just let landlords, be rid of these tenants. They still have property rights, and they should be able to get rid of these tenants if they're not able to pay.